our grammar Nazi.
Ooh, we're live. Groovy.
Watching.
I think our first statement on the live broadcast should be that grammar standardization is a tool of the elite to oppress the underclass.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I'm an English teacher, so you can believe me about that.
And colloquial grammar is leagues different from written grammar.
You can go listen to the fucking Lex G movie podcast if you care about grammar, okay?
Hey, what is
go
the
hang
Lex
out with
G
that
movie
corner
podcast?
of the internet.
What is
I don't
Lex
need
G?
to explain what that is. I don't need to let more people. This is a dude that
aren't you feuding with
I don't
him?
like on the internet.
Yeah.
Not with him, but with his killabees, his cronies, his minions, his enablers.
Oh, he's got his stands have names.
This episode of Cinematary
He's just this like
by Nathan's Twitter feud.
Yeah, he's just this like shitty guy who emerged from the comments of movie blogs by folks like Glenn Kenny and Jeff Wells a millennia ago, and he's been very mean on the level of Devin Faraci to many people over the years, and now has popularity as like an irony edgelord shitposter, and recently pivoted to a podcast, which has become very successful over a few months, and it's literally just him talking to himself about his memories of watching movies in the 90s as a failed stand-up comic who lived with his mother.
Because like I'm a regular person here, and I have no idea. And I'm kind of wondering the people.
Yeah, I know it's very stupid.
Have any fucking idea.
By the way, another weird insular thing. Glenn Kenny follows me on Twitter.
Who is this?
I don't know
who
why.
are we talking about? I thought this is a movie podcast. Damn it.
He's like an old.
It is Glenn Kenny,
New York film critic.
He is a critic for the New York Times, among other publications. He soft blocked me on Twitter once. I think because I defended the Soviet Union or something like that. I don't know. It's one of those things. It's fine.
With
a lot
all these
of middle-aged
people, I'm like
on Twitter don't like me,
and
they like to.
Very online.
I was about to say, I'm like that Don Draper.
Yeah, I hate it.
Like, I don't think about you at all.
Yeah, I saw that meme floating around.
Yeah, you know, I should take a little bit more of a page from Drake, who once said, "Fuck going online." That ain't part of my.
I get on Twitter, I look for some good jokes to laugh at, and then I get off Twitter. Like, all right, I got a little serotonin boost there. I saw a good joke.
I tweeted this yesterday.
I'm gone.
The quote from Burial. He said, "I'll leave those people to their internet or whatever."
So I recently saw a thing I didn't know about Burial, where he said that one of his EPs was like a statement against bullying, which is just very funny.
Is it?
I don't know.
Is it the one that ends with the Lily Wachowski quote? That would make sense.
Yeah.
One of
but just being like
anti-bullying message.
Well, it's like
he literally
specifically like
he said like
people.
Can I use that in my counseling curriculum?
Please,
sure. He said it in an article. He was like, these beats, these ghostly beats are a statement against bullying, taking a stand. Bullies can't get down to the jungle beats.
I've never heard Nathan's British accent.
I would like to take this opportunity
it kind of fits
to
him.
give a nice warm hello to Ron.
Have we started recording yet?
We're on YouTube right now. This is going out on the YouTube video. We should probably start actually.
I was just making sure I didn't miss that at some point.
We're gonna go. We're gonna go.
Zach's looking a little impatient.
We're gonna go Michael, Nathan, and then the Swaffs. Well, the Swaffs are past their bedtime, so
we are.
Yeah, we gotta go. Are we done podcasting?
We got Bionicles to talk about.
I got dreams to have.
Here we go. In
thank you, Bionicles.
In 3, 2.
Wait, I'm sorry. What was the order? I was not paying attention.
I was not either. I'm glad you.
You're last. You're last.
Nathan, Michael, and then Swaps.
Okay.
Yeah. In 3.
Wait. No, I was kidding. Go ahead.
That was why I wasn't paying attention.
We're just trying to add some humor to the show because it's lacking.
We're not funny.
We're not very funny. Here we go.
Just having a laugh.
In 3, 2, 1.
Oh wait, I got an error.
Oh
my
Audacity is being
350 episodes, baby.
we'll figure it out sometime. We've
This
just
is
killed
giving me
5
more
minutes of
opportunities
time.
to do Zach's face over and over again.
Okay, let's try
My
that.
impression.
Let's try one.
Is it gonna work?
Yeah.
Okay. In 3, 2, 1. And welcome to episode 350 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Nathan Smith.
Michael O'Malley.
Andrew Swafford.
Jesse Alba.
And in today's episode, we will be celebrating 350 episodes of the
Yo.
podcast. We're switching it up. Instead of doing a movie swap or getting drunk, we thought about shooting heroin. Elected not to.
I never
Train
agreed to
spotting.
Yeah.
We talked about the Prodigy Smack My Bitch Up video a couple weeks ago, and now we're going to do it live.
There you go. That was on the table as well. But instead,
I was met with silence.
I'm sorry. Well, I think we're almost to the Swaff's bedtime right now. It's we're not. We got to get some. We'll get some energy going. Once the heroin starts coursing through our veins, we'll be good.
Okay, I'm legally obligated to tell you. Nobody did.
No one is doing heroin.
that I know
officer.
of.
Heroin notorious for energizing people, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Yes.
Exactly.
Really takes the edge off.
I saw Pain and Glory. Am I right?
I don't know. I didn't.
That was also met with silence.
Damn. Okay.
Well,
Guess
we're
my
gonna
jokes
go.
aren't hitting.
Yeah, we're gonna go take a trip down memory lane. We elected to watch movies that we distinctly remember from kind of growing up, and it was kind of fun. It was one, whether you remembered anything from it or not, and then two, was it any good?
And I think we all specifically elected to watch movies that we knew ahead of time weren't going to be good. Like one of Jesse's big nostalgia movies is Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring.
Okay, I still think I should have done that one. But...
The first movie I saw in a theater was Toy Story. But both those movies are good and people talk about them all the time. And, what is there to say, right? We're digging deep into the deep memories of movies from like the nascent stage of memory making that are movies that we were fixated on as children, that we watched a ton of times on VHS or whatever, but probably weren't worth the time of day. We were just stuck with them.
That's true. Before we jump in, I do want to tell you to head over to cinematary.com. If you're watching this as we record, we got the big Patreon button, so if you would like to support the podcast, patreon.com/cinematary. And you can watch us as we record live and Jesse hiccups. So you get
hit that button.
Yeah, you get that live on the old YouTube. But let's go ahead
watch
and jump
what happens
into,
live.
Exactly. You can watch all the
Andy
the
Cohen
mess ups,
mode.
the mess ups, the jokes. The forgetting of what order it is. All of that is available on
everything
Patreon.
That's too hot for television, everything that gets censored.
Well, let's go ahead and kick this off with we're gonna pick on people. We're gonna start by picking on our newest core member of the Cinematary crew, who's not paying attention at the moment, and she is gonna be going first with her pick.
Yeah.
The choicest pick.
I was paying attention, sort of, in that I was trying to come up with some extra stuff to say about this movie.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to you reading the log line off of IMDb.
I'm not going to do that, but I will say, just to say, the movie that I watched, as the little banner suggests, is The Seventh Brother.
The Seventh Seal?
The Seventh Brother.
It's the sequel to The Seventh Seal.
It's not the sequel to The Seventh Seal. It is a cartoon.
7 Brides for 7 Brothers?
Nope. It is a cartoon movie from 1991, directed by...
You're going to need to talk in the mic.
Directed by...
There you go.
Some Hungarian men.
Okay.
or maybe women. I don't know. Gino Koltai and Yosef.
We're not drunk this
James.
episode, by the way.
Pretty sure Yosef
I'm not
is
either.
male.
Probably Yosef is a male. I didn't know it was Hungarian when I watched it as a child because it was in English and I don't speak Hungarian.
What
the
we
movie-
watched is not even really the original version of the movie, right?
I don't know what you asked.
Because it was
I'm
like
not responding
it
to
was like a re-edit of like a German version and a Hungarian.
I don't
version.
know.
Oh,
So the movie circles around Tiny the dog. He's a small dog. If you want to see on the screen, you can kind of see him. He's very small. He's very tiny. And
the picture is tiny. Yeah.
he's a little
If
dog.
you're not on Patreon, this is what you're missing.
You're missing this
Exactly.
good quality content of a tiny image on a tiny screen of a small cartoon dog
Name tag.
named Tiny. He's a small dog. He's with his owner, who's a little girl, and her grandpa, I presume. He's old anyway. And they're on a trip in their car, and it's a rainy day. They have to stop their car. He sees a frog. He jumps out of the car, and then he gets lost. So then it's a treacherous story of how is this poor tiny dog named Tiny going to make his way back to his beloved family. He gets adopted by a family of rabbits, girls and boy rabbits, then thus naming him the titular seventh brother in this family of rabbits.
There are not 7 brothers though.
Well,
which
yeah,
is
it is a little
a
confusing.
real
'cause there are-
sticking point.
it should be the seventh sibling if we're going to be particular grammar
He's
consultants here, but do we
at
need to do
best,
that?
the
We have to be
fourth
established
brother.
already that we don't need to do that. There are an equal number of brothers and sisters, I believe. So anyway, these rabbits teach him the ways of the forest, and how to survive the forest, how to be safe if you are a small, tiny forest creature, how to stay safe from poachers, how to stay safe from carnivorous birds or foxes.
Foxes, that's correct.
Or other treacherous feats within the forest. You know, it can be quite treacherous out there for some tiny rabbits, and these rabbits do teach him the ways of being safe while he's reconciling this journey back home. He finally does make it back home. Spoiler alert.
This is a great movie if you're wanting to cultivate anxiety early on as a child.
So let me go into that a little bit. So I watched this movie as a child. I don't know how or why I did watch this movie as a child. I don't know how I accessed this. Did I own
Jesse,
it?
I have a theory about this after you get done because there's
I have
a
a
shared
theory about this
understanding.
as well.
Yeah.
But we can discuss. However, I did see this movie. I did see this movie a lot growing up. Was it some kind of evangelical movement movie? It was like approved by evangelical churches and just circulated throughout. Was this a movie?
Yeah. So
I don't know.
this is actually my theory because of the Cinematary crew. You and me and Ash are the people who knew this movie.
Yes.
And I think all of us are probably the ones with the
Former
strongest evangelical presence as children. And specifically in America, this movie was distributed by Feature Films for Families, which was actually my mom would mail order from them. And I think church libraries would frequently stock their movies. And I don't know that they actually produced movies, but they certainly distributed movies. My guess is that these just floated around the evangelical subculture because of that distributor, the Feature Films for Families, because their whole thing was they either censored existing movies to be family appropriate, or they found movies that didn't already have distribution that they deemed family appropriate.
So they're just digging through Hungarian family films. And
I would say this was the only animated one that I ever saw. Most of them were really low budget, live action, kind of stuff. I remember, did you watch the Buttercream Gang, Jesse? Did you ever hear about that one?
What?
It was a bunch of stuff. Don't worry about it, Jesse. You should talk about your movie.
That does sound familiar, and maybe we can get about.
I've heard of
another time.
I've heard of the Apple Bottom Gang, but not the Butter.
This is more dairy.
And it's also possible. I feel like I watched a lot of just weird, random cartoons at my local library. I remember watching some deeply traumatizing, Little Mermaid cartoon movie at my library. It was like a bummer, and she murders Eric, and it's like a whole mess.
Whoa.
So, like,
Disney?
I feel like
Was
I
it one of
Please
the three?
remember,
No, it
please
was
remember
not
what the
Disney.
name of that movie is. I want to see it.
I have no idea. I have weird memories. It could have been something weird that I just rented from the library and then told my parents I liked it, and we just kept renting it from the library over and over. I don't know what the fuck. But anyway, it's a movie that I watched a lot. Now, is this movie good?
No.
No. But I watched it a lot growing up. And so I felt like I needed to talk about it today. I did find out as I agreed to watch this movie that it is not originally distributed or made in America. It was Hungarian. So that was unusual because I did not know that. I was just like some kid watching this elusive foreign
Also,
dub.
it's very
movie.
funny in the title card of the movie that it is obviously the original title is The Seventh Brother. And they have just written the word tiny over the title card so they can have it be like a character mascot title.
Yeah. And so I feel like I'd be remiss if I did not mention what was so impactful to me about this movie growing up is that, as I mentioned, it's a lot about forest survival safety. So I feel like it's a good how-to movie if you are a young child who, for some reason or another, ever gets lost in the forest. But the rabbits emphasize this point by singing a song, not once, but twice in the movie, about how danger is all around to get you.
Please sing.
I might sing it to you.
The rabbits emphasize this
the
point.
Rabbits emphasize this point. And so there's a song that they sing not once but twice in the movie that's called "Danger's All Around to Get You." And the first time they sing the song, there's a scene like you just see this rabbit. He's like the grumpiest rabbit brother in the rabbit family, and he rapidly turns into like an evil monster. And so it's just like danger's all around to get you. And then like you watch his face like slowly get like gnarlier and gnarlier. And if you can see
like
us
long
right now,
claw
he gets
fingers.
long claws and like fangs. And when you're watching it like as a grown up, you're like, okay. But when you're watching it as a little kid, you're like, oh, fuck. This is existentially terrifying shit, my dude. Like, danger is all around to get you.
I mean, that's the thesis of the movie, is that the world is dangerous.
I do feel like that is the thesis. They sing the song twice in the movie. Like, what else am I supposed to do?
It's one of these movies along the lines of, like...
Zach is such a turd.
It's one of these movies along the lines of, like, Bambi... or The Fox and the Hound,
yes.
Or to a more hardcore extent, Watership Down.
Those are all much better movies.
All much better movies. Just about like the hostility of the world and how like you will like suffer and things will frighten you. And ultimately, the framing of this movie, it's like there's like a frame story where like this wise old owl is explaining to us why this story matters. And it's all because like
that guy, though.
The imagined audience member watching is like supposedly needs courage.
Also scared. Yeah.
And so he's like, here's a story that's going to teach you how to be courageous.
The takeaway message is danger. Yeah, sure, there's dangerous, but it's okay to take risks sometimes and be brave. But that wasn't the message I took away ever, and still not yet have not taken that away. Mostly what I take away is you should be scared of everything and anything. Because they sing the song twice. The second time they sing the song is a scene where they're talking about how if the rabbits go out in the field, then a hawk might reach down and get them. It's terrifying shit.
Real breakdown of Foreman content here. They want to say be brave, but the movie says be afraid.
You know what, as a child, like was the message that I remember getting from this movie when I watched it is that dogs will starve to death if only eating rabbit food. Because isn't that how the movie ends? Is like he's starving because he is only eating like leafy dirt stuff,
they're
and
omnivores.
they
They need proteins.
people.
They find him, and then it's so stupid too. Also, I would say that this movie has a pretty actively anti-racist messaging in the movie.
True. But it's very fat phobic.
It is a very fat phobic movie, for sure. I
It's
will
called
say that
Tiny.
it is
Almost got
anti-racist
there.
though, in like
Almost
a
got there.
profound way. There's this magpie character who's just like constantly trying to stir up shit with everybody. Like, did you see that this family adopted this dog? And then everyone's like, cool, yeah, that's great, good for them. Like, why wouldn't they? That dog's pretty nice. And she's like, no, and she's freaking out. And everybody gives her such a hard time for it, which is what you should do to racist or homophobic people. Michael, tell me what your experience of watching this movie was growing up, because you know what I'm talking about.
Well, so yeah, I do. I remember. So when I was well, between the ages of like 3 and 5, I lived in Arkansas for a short period of time, and it was bookended by much longer periods of time living in Texas. And so this movie, The Seventh Brother, is really ingrained in my head, associated with the period from which I moved from Little Rock back to San Antonio, because around that time my family got this movie. And so I watched it a ton because we were like, my dad was in the Air Force, and so we were living in like government housing for a little while and stuff. And there wasn't a lot to do. So I remember watching this movie a lot. And there's also a sequel that came out several years later called Tiny Heroes, which I remember not being as good, but I also watched that a lot too. But like I said, like you guys said, I definitely associated it with like that whole movement of like lost dog fiction, you know, or like lost animal fiction. And there's all sorts of like movies that fit into this, you know, where like The Incredible Journey or like Homeward Bound, like that sort of stuff, where like it was like familiar to me on that level. And like I also remember it being pretty sad. I remember it being kind of a bummer movie at a lot of points. And so for that reason, I don't remember particularly enjoying the movie, but I did watch it a lot because I remember that. And I also remember something I actually think about pretty actively a lot is there's a scene in which like the dog is taught how to eat carrots, and he just like honks down the whole carrot, and the rabbits make fun of him because he eats the green part as well. And I think about that a lot when I'm cutting up carrots. I'm like, okay, can't eat the green part.
Love that.
Anyway, those are my scattered thoughts because I had not even thought about this movie in probably 15 or 20 years. Well, probably 15 years until you mentioned it. So I don't have like super strong thoughts except those scattered memories.
I looked through like Letterboxd on it. There's not a lot of people who've vlogged it, and there's not a lot of reviews on it. I think there's only like 20 reviews, and every review is like the same review, and it's like, oh shit, you guys have seen this movie too? Oh damn, wasn't that one scene scary? Can't believe we all have this weird memory that like we didn't know anybody else had. So that's a good feeling.
Evangelical Christians unite.
Is it a good movie? No. Is it a well-made movie? It's not. If you want to watch it though, you can find it in very low tier quality on YouTube.
It's
so
actually
check it
a VHS rip.
It's a VHS
and there
rip.
There are moments in the video where it like the VHS like deteriorates and there's just like really bad scan lining stuff happening.
If you are a listener who was also raised evangelical Christian and you saw this movie growing up, I'd love to hear from you. Please send us a message just so we know we're not alone. There are dozens of us who've seen this movie.
There are dozens.
And this is what I give to you all. You're welcome. Adios.
Thank you. Well, speaking of evangelical Christians, let's move on.
All right, so this is me, right? Also a recovering evangelical Christian. And I watched...
Hi, Michael.
Yeah, hey. I watched The Pagemaster, which
could have easily been my pick too, by the way. This is a big nostalgia movie for me.
Yeah, and interestingly, like it's funny that you mentioned that the whole point of The Seventh Brother is like you should be scared all the time. Because The Pagemaster, the entire plot centers around Macaulay Culkin playing a person named Richie, which I will point out, this movie came out the same year as Richie Rich, which means that Macaulay Culkin played two different characters with the same name, and in the same year. And I wonder how often that's happened with actors. But at any rate, like Richie is just terrified of everything. Like he knows all these statistics about like how mercury in tuna is going to kill you, or like, you know, the probability of being struck by lightning, or like, you know, he's just a very like scared kid. And so like his arc in the movie is supposed to be learning how to be brave. But like you, Jessy, I also, watching this as an adult, I thought this is actually a movie in which like there's a lot of really dangerous things that maybe you should be afraid of. And so the form of the movie maybe, or the content of the movie maybe does not fit the theme, but I'll get to that in a second. Just a little background. I don't remember the first time I saw this movie, but this was definitely one of those movies where like every time my family went to like Hollywood Video or Blockbuster, I just got this movie and I watched it so many times. And even more so than that, somewhere along the line, someone gave me the novelization of it. And so I was like a very early reader. And this was like one of the first books that I read was the novelization of The Pagemaster, which I probably read more than I actually saw the movie, to be honest. But I was really enthralled because as an early reader, I was really like taken by like the possibility of like reading. Like all of a sudden, I was like, wow, I can read these things and it's stories. And so like the concept of the Pagemaster really appealed to me because the concept is, besides Macaulay Culkin being a little scaredy cat for doing things like wearing a helmet when he rides a bike, the concept is he like gets knocked unconscious in a library with Christopher Lloyd is this really like charismatic librarian who, by the way, has a limit of 2 books. Like that's the book limit. Like that is outrageous. Like Knox County Library has like dozens of books at a time you can check out. But at any rate, so Macaulay Culkin
Does he give
like
a reason why?
Well, no, and then he breaks his rule because Macaulay Culkin is like, "Can I check out 3 books just this once?" Because he's made friends with the books by the end of the movie, and he like does the little like Santa Claus like. You know, he's like, just this once.
Let me do some cocaine, then I'll figure it out.
But
that's a visual joke for all you podcast listeners.
We're not going to explain it for everybody. You got to join the Patreon
/ good our YouTube channel.
But at any rate, he gets knocked unconscious in the library because there's been a rainstorm. Actually, just to backtrack. His dad is building a treehouse to like scare him straight in the sense of like, this kid's such a fraidy cat and he won't go up in this treehouse, but I'm going to build this treehouse so he can learn to be brave, be up in this treehouse. But I need like nails from the hardware store. And so I'm going to send him on his bike across town at the hardware to go to the hardware store. And while Macaulay Culkin's like riding his bike across town, there's like a giant storm that like knocks out power and stuff. And so he retreats into a library for like safety. And he's still dripping wet, so he slips and hits his head in the library and like wakes up to find himself like a cartoon and with like talking books around him. Like basically the idea, and it doesn't exactly make sense because some of the books are characters and then some of the books can be open and read and the things inside the book will jump out. Like for example, there's a book voiced by Patrick Stewart who doesn't sound at all like Patrick Stewart.
They went so hard on these voice actors, man. They didn't spare any expense.
Just actors in general, Macaulay Culkin and Christopher Lloyd and Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, this movie was a financial flop, by the way. It cost $34 million and it only grossed $13 million. And may have contributed to the downfall of its studio its animation studio, Turner.
What was the studio?
Turner Feature Animation. They did Cats Don't Dance as well, which also was a failure financially. I don't know, but at any rate, so he's a cartoon, and like in this like world in which like basically it's a land of like fiction. So you can go to different like the implications like there's different regions of this land that are the domain of certain genres. And from this point on, it basically becomes Ready Player One, except instead of like 80s references, it's like 1880s references, right? So like they have like Jules Verne references and like Victor Hugo stuff, and so like for all those like 80s kids, the 1880s kids, this must have been a real nostalgia trip in the 90s.
What with all those Jules Verne references, they were just like, hell yeah, this is my jam.
Now I will say that like as a kid. Who was just discovering reading and also had watched a ton of Wishbone on PBS. So I kind of knew these titles. And so it actually was like references that I knew, a lot of them. And I was like kind of excited with the idea. And so basically the whole thing like ends up being like a read PSA where like he learns that like, wow, there's all these amazing stories in books. And like that's how he learns to be brave is like by like the stories he encounters in these books. Although in the movie, he's not actually reading, he's actually jumping into books and experiencing those books. So it's kind of a weird message because one, he's like going through super dangerous stuff, like probably getting a concussion, falling in that library, and he gets eaten by a dragon and stuff. So like maybe he should have been afraid of that, contrary to the movie's message. And then, and also like he doesn't actually read. He just like goes through an adventure with these books.
But he is a reader. He's a book kid.
He is a book kid. I guess it's not very cinematic to watch someone read, and so I guess the implication is he's reading later on. but I was just captivated by this idea of books like coming alive, and you go into their little genre like domains. And I was so captivated that like one of my very first creative writing endeavors was to create like a Pagemaster fan fiction in which there were different books. Because I was like, yeah, those books are cool. So like the three main books are fantasy, horror, and pirate. Oh no, he's adventure, but he's a
the
pirate.
three genres: fantasy, horror,
really
and
make me want to
pirate.
watch this.
Well, but as a child, I was like, those are not the only genres, and so I was like, what other genres could they have gone in? And so as a child, I think I did. What was it like? I still kept adventure because I liked the pirates. But I was really into baseball at the time, so I had a sports like land where they could read about sports, and then I don't know. Somehow it didn't compute to me that I could have experienced sports in the real world instead of this like fantasy like book world. But I was like, it's got to be sports.
Played football.
Yeah, and I don't remember what the third one was, but I remember like they go into Peter Pan. And I remember they go into the Chronicles of Narnia at one point. Like I remember I was just like, I got to make more stories where like there's more stuff that these people go into.
Did you write fan fiction about obscure shit you were into, or were you normal?
I mean, this was probably the only. This is the only fan fiction I've ever participated in, and I will say like probably the most obscure element of it was the Pagemaster. Everything else was like I said, like Peter Pan and the Chronicles of Narnia and stuff. But
fan fiction is published.
I definitely wrote fan fiction about a video game I played once. It didn't do
anything. I thought you were going to say about the Seventh Brother.
Oh no, it was. I wrote it in a journal. I
hope
it's been burned. I hope it's gone forever.
Oh man, there's a whole archive of.
Did you ever play the
fanfic?
What?
Oh boy.
Did you ever play the it was computer video game, or maybe it was on some other console? I don't know.
No, I didn't. It was just the novelization in the movie. But anyway, watching it as an adult, I realized what many people realize when they return to things that they were obsessed with as like a 5, 6, 7-year-old, which is that it's terrible. And I think it was the idea.
The animation is really good, and the ideas are really good.
Yeah, so I really liked the animation. I liked the animation. And I liked the idea of books coming alive and stuff. And so I think that was like the real hook for the movie that like carried me through. But like watching it now, like there are some nice little animated flourishes, like especially when they go through like the horror land or whatever. There's some really cool like images and lighting and stuff like that. Like they kind of expressionists and stuff. But for the most part, the animation looks pretty cheap and forgettable. Yeah. And the Macaulay Culkin cartoon character, like they make him look like Macaulay Culkin. And so he's just like gawky and awkward, not because of Macaulay Culkin, but it's like he looks really like kind of realistic, but not in a good way, kind of like in an awkward way compared to like what he's surrounded by. So the animation's kind of really subpar. Like I said, the messaging is really muddled. I'll also say that like at the beginning of the movie, Macaulay Culkin's character is like telling his dad all these statistics about how he could die, and his dad's like, "Son, you can't live life living by statistics." And I was just like, like there's like the like Vietnam meme where like, the little like face and in the background is crosscut with like the Vietnam stuff. And I had like flashbacks of talking to like anti-vaxxers and stuff like that. And I was like, oh no, this guy is like a future COVID denier. Cause that's definitely cause like Macaulay Culkin's bringing up like legitimate like worries. And it's like, son, you can't live by statistics. But anyway, like also it's just boring. Like, as an adult now, like I'm so bored. Like as a kid, like I felt like, wow, this like understands all these references from Wishbone and like the very scattered number of books I had read, which one of them was Treasure Island. So I was like totally into the pirate stuff.
Oh my God.
But now as an adult, I see it as like really lazy, like skimming the top of the public domain. Because it is just like the most like generic stuff and doesn't do anything interesting with any of the properties that it engaged. Like they show up to Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and he drinks the potion and turns into Mr. Hyde, and they run away. And they show up with Captain Ahab, and there's the white whale, and he tries to get the white whale, and they run away. And it's like just like just the meme versions of these like literary characters with nothing like interesting going on, like using any of the interesting things from these books. It's just like the most commonly known like plot details about this book, without any
whale facts.
Yeah. Where's the made up whale science? So anyway, like I just found it all really, really dull. Which I didn't really think this was going to be good. But I probably hadn't watched it since I was like 7 or something, and so I was hoping that like maybe there was something that I had missed. But no, this is just pretty bad. And
Also,
boring.
isn't your movie an hour and 14 or hour and 15 minutes? Something
It's
like that?
under an hour 20.
Yeah, I mean that was the case for Jesse's movie and the case for my movie. So I guess
mercifully short. I will
I'm
say.
amazed at like how boring an hour and 15-minute movie can be. Even if
Yeah,
it's geared towards
100%.
children. Yeah, we were laughing too because like the Bionicle movie does a whole lot of shit. The Seventh Brother does a whole lot of here's the name of this rabbit and now here's the name of this rabbit. Like it spends 20 minutes of the movie literally just introducing a new character.
Yes, if we could briefly jump back to the Seventh Brother, there's a lot of runtime padding in the Seventh Brother. There's the thing Jessy just said about like the long song introducing every single character, but also there's like a like the sad song, which is the equivalent of like the when she loved me montage from Toy Story 2, right? But the only footage that's in that song, say a character reminiscing on their past, but the only footage is footage that has already been in the movie.
No,
so
and footage that is later on in the movie.
Footage that does not happen in the movie.
He's reminiscing. He's crying and reminiscing about like future scenes in the movie, including scenes where he reunites with his
and like, but also it's so funny to me that like when he's thinking about the past, he's thinking about like yesterday. Like he's not thinking
about 5 minutes ago when you're eating a carrot. Like
the seventh brother is a prototype for Christopher Nolan's Tenet.
Probably
that's it. Yeah,
I just think it's really funny how these like these random movies like just find some very interesting and dumb ways to fill up their very little runtime.
These are cinematic equivalent of shovelware games, right? They're just like they're pumping out content for the families to plop their kids in front of.
I do miss like this era of like kids movies being under an hour and a half, because if you're just going to make a dreadful like paycheck type movie, where you're just phoning it in, it might as well not take very much time. As opposed to, like, I just feel like runtimes are inflating so much these days. Like the new Disney movies are all like pushing 2 hours, which is just ridiculous. But I will say to the Pagemaster's credit, it does not pad time. What it feels like is just a blitz through a ton of plot points, none of which are developed or even very connected to one another. Like it's like under 10 minutes before he gets to the library and is unconscious and is a cartoon in the Pagemaster. And I think like that is insufficient for setting up the arc that they wish to set up for Macaulay Culkin's character. And they don't take any more time with anything else. Like it is just like a sprint through this story that the movie definitely wouldn't be better necessarily if it were longer, but it is definitely like bad partially because its short running time means that nothing is developed and there is nothing, like no meat on this movie's bones, which I guess is a good thing considering how bad it is, but is also like maybe a testament to like how little thought out this movie was. Don't recommend the Pagemaster.
I don't know. I kind of want to watch it. You've really made a good case for it, I think.
Well, I would say, unlike The Seventh Brother, it has made it to DVD, so you can get it at the Knox County Library on DVD. So I guess if you really want to revisit those 70 minutes of subpar animation and really poorly integrated literary references, like cursory glances at literary classics from the like late 19th century, I mean, go for it. But maybe it'll like captivate some children once again and make them read. Because as an English teacher, gosh darn it, like
I should be reading Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. What are kids doing these days?
Like I'm not saying all kids need to do that, but like that's like I remember, like I said, Wishbone was a major touchstone for me, and I remember watching Wishbone and thinking, that looks cool, and going to the library and checking out the books that I saw on Wishbone, and some of them were impenetrable. Like I could not get through them, but then some of them I ended up really enjoying. Like I mentioned Treasure Island, and last week I think The Time Machine, which I had also seen on Wishbone. So I guess like, I don't know if we have movies like Ready Player One, which are like doing essentially the same thing as the Pagemaster, just getting people hyped for like The Shining and stuff. Maybe we can have. Say what?
Is that what it's doing? Getting people hyped for The Shining?
That's like a whole third of the movie is they jump into The Shining.
It's rewarding you for knowing what The Shining is, right?
Yeah, it's giving you like.
I think that scene is better than The Shining.
It's a good scene. It's my favorite scene in Ready Player One. But I will say that, like, I mean, that movie was geared toward children, right? Like, not all of it was gratifying people who grew up with it. Part of it was advertising these properties for a new generation, right? So, like, I know students who are familiar with properties because of how they have seen those properties integrated into other media, not necessarily because they've seen those things. And like, I support that for classic literature, right? You know, give us some good, interesting integration of classic literature into like a little like mixed media movie. This is not it, though.
I would say that the closer association would be like when Marvel movies have like, you know, like a random character show up for like 5 minutes and be like, yeah, hey, remember me from Doctor Strange for, you know, a couple of years ago?
I don't know.
Here.
I feel like both of these are you're comparing apples and oranges, right? Like the Marvel thing and the Ready Player One thing is more about like cultivating like they're like assimilating the audience into like a broader culture of fandom, right? That like these are other products that you can purchase. But Pagemaster is like kind of pointing people backwards towards like a canon of art that nobody's making.
That's what Ready Player One is doing too. It's a canon. It's just a commodified canon that Ready Player One is doing. Like that. Ready Player One is still participating in the like process of canonization, and the book it's based on is doing that even more so. It's like canonization and rewarding like people who know all this like, you know, nostalgic stuff. But it is also cultivating like an interest in these things as well, and that interest is monetized because you still have to pay for these things. And the Pagemaster is different because they're all in the public domain. But I think that like there's an overlap for sure between like what these projects are doing, just on
my point is like the company that puts out the Pagemaster is not also getting royalties for Treasure Island book sales. Right.
Well, right, for sure. That's but my point was that if we can get things like Ready Player One, like I would rather get things that were like hyping up like, you know, literature. But as you guys have sufficiently pointed out, the forces of capitalism and corporate IP are working against that. So
that's fair. That's usually the case too.
Yeah, darn it, capitalism.
Mm-hmm. That's just not groovy, you know.
It's not groovy. Unlike this disco ball, which our viewers are getting to enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. Let's try to squeeze one more in before we head to the break.
We could do break. Oh, actually no. I was miscounting how many people.
My movie does have a Steven Spielberg connection. Yeah,
let's do it.
Toss it over from Ready Player One.
There we go.
So, as I think I've mentioned at various points on the podcast, just because it's come up sometimes, I think about shaping my early engagement with cinema and media. But I grew up Mormon. So of course a religious environment that was pretty strict and morally uptight. In a lot of ways, my parents were a little more open with like media consumption than a lot of other people that I knew and grew up with. I knew a lot of people whose parents were just very much like, every book you pick up at the library, you know, I'm gonna flip through it and see if any bad words stand out or anything like that, or read what it's about or whatever, or, you know, let me like look at the website you're going to go to before you go to it, things like that. And my parents did some of that, but they were also like a little bit, I think, more open to like art and literature and things. And so I definitely got exposed to some stuff that other Mormon kids didn't. But just because my parents were still somewhat concerned about like content and morals and all that good stuff, we did kind of, end up, which I think is the case for a lot of Mormons, there is some overlap with that sort of like evangelical Christian market of like family friendly movies. And that company that you mentioned, Michael, I pretty distinctly remember like seeing the like bumper for it at the beginning of some VHS tape we had, but I don't remember what it was. And like I think that for a lot of people too, like for a long time, maybe it's changed, but Disney was like a very go-to like safe brand for a lot of more conservatively inclined families. So
you must not
this
have been
movie,
involved in the great Disney boycotts of the 90s.
I'm sure. Yeah. As I was kind of saying that, I was like, well, that's not really true, but I think there is like still,
for sure.
yeah, I think there is still something, at least like with at least the older, the kind of canon of Disney movies, Bambi and stuff. People are, parents are like, oh yeah, we know that's good. We know that's uplifting entertainment or whatever. So the movie that I picked, which is something I saw in theaters when it came out in winter of 2001, and then I think I watched a number of times afterwards, like with my family and maybe at church functions and stuff, is this really kind of curious incident of a very or relatively mainstream movie theatrically released that's about Mormons and Mormonism. And it's the 2001 movie The Other Side of Heaven, which was weirdly distributed and produced by Disney. And it starred, this actor Christopher Gorham, who is not Mormon, but because of this movie has ended up being in a lot of like Mormon direct-to-video movies. And it also co-stars a very young Anne Hathaway. This movie was actually filmed before The Princess Diaries, which was her breakout movie, but it came out several months afterwards, and sort of tried to capitalize a little bit on the success of that. And she's actually not in the movie very much. But she's on the poster and is kind of like the co-star, the romantic interest, I guess. But it was very, I don't know, this movie coming out, I remember, even though I was pretty young, that it was a pretty big deal just because, like I said, this was very rare, a sort of like mainstream movie that is about Mormons directly. It's about a Mormon missionary based off of the memoir of this guy, John Groberg, who served a mission in Tonga in the 1950s. And there's actually a very, very huge Mormon missionary presence in the Pacific Islands, specifically Tonga and American Samoa. I knew actually growing up, even in Texas, a number of people from Tonga, Samoa, Hawaii, other Pacific Islands who had converted to Mormonism at some point growing up, or their parents had converted and then they had moved to the mainland US, or like missionaries I knew that were from Tonga. And actually kind of a weird, interesting cinematic fun fact, the innovative, famous Filipino director Lino Brocka, of movies like Manila and the Claws of Light, he was actually allegedly the first Mormon convert in the Philippines, and he served a mission in Hawaii, which is really interesting because I'm pretty sure that he left the church at some point because a lot of his movies, especially his later movies, are very gay and very explicitly queer. So there's not a whole lot of information about that, but it's kind of something I want to learn more about. But there is obviously wrapped up in that a lot of kind of colonial ideas, largely white people from the United States going to share the word of the Lord in these islands that have been colonized and subject to various empires over the centuries and stuff. And so just a little bit of context of just like what the setting of this movie. But there is kind of a like Mormon film industry a little bit, and a sort of market of movies like directed towards Mormons. It's mostly direct to video. You have a lot, like you have comedies like Baptists at our barbecue and like Mormons and the mafia. Like one called like there's one it's called like The Best 2 Years, which is about a guy who's like coming back from his mission and like trying to adjust to normal life. There's also a kind of like actually the literal church itself, even though it has a very guarded and wary relationship to pop culture, sometimes it does really use like now the internet, but previously like films to teach and to like kind of spread principles and whatever. A lot of times, you know, they're documentaries and stuff or like educational cartoons, but there are like these iconic like Mormon narrative short films that you get shown in Sunday school and stuff growing up. Like there's this director from the 70s who made a lot of these. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but there's like a short film that you get shown when you're a teenager called The Phone Call, about this guy who's trying to work up the courage to ask out a girl on a date. And it's all about, you know, like being respectful and like waiting to the appropriate age to date and all of that. And then there's another movie that the same guy made, which is called Johnny Lingo, which is set on a like fictional Pacific island. And it's all about this guy named Johnny Lingo who wants to marry this girl. And on this island, to marry a girl, you have to give her father a gift of cows. And there's this girl that he's in love with who everybody says is really ugly. And there's this famous like Mormon line, like Mormon in-joke where people say, "Muhana, you ugly," which is like what like her dad says to her in the movie, because everybody's just like, "Oh, you're ugly, like you're worth no cows, nobody's going to give you any cows." And then Johnny Lingo, who respects women and sees the inner beauty, he gives her father 10 cows because he's like, she's a 10 cower on the inside. And this was actually
he's like, "No, you're worth, girl. You're a 10 cower."
Literally
10 out of 10 cows.
You're all
the only 10 cow.
All the ladies are worth 10 cows. No more first cow. We're talking about 10 cows. But that was actually, Johnny Lingo was adapted into a like feature-length direct-to-video movie in the early 2000s called like The Return of Johnny Lingo or something. And a lot of these movies too are also like distributed by a company called the Deseret Media Group, which is like the church's sort of like, they print like kind of casual popular fiction about Mormon topics and sort of light historical nonfiction books about the church. And they also release movies. And in the early 2000s, The Other Side of Heaven was kind of part of a wave to try to in the early 2000s, there was kind of a wave to sort of make Mormon movies that were more like a little bit more like mainstream faith films that maybe weren't like overt in the Mormon references, that were a little bit more universalized in the sort of Christian concepts and could reach a little bit of a broader audience. So The Other Side of Heaven was actually produced by this guy named Gerald R. Molin, who also produced the movie I just mentioned, The Return of Johnny Lingo. And he was like a long-time producing partner, executive producer for Steven Spielberg and Amblin Entertainment, all the way through the 80s up to Minority Report. And he is, yeah, I said there was a Spielberg connection. And this guy is active Mormon, very conservative. When the Oscars got called out several years ago at the beginning of the kind of Oscars So White stuff, he was like, racism doesn't exist. And if you think that racism is a thing, then it's like your fault. So very conservative guy, and he sort of fell off the map a little bit after producing a couple Mormon movies in the early 2000s, and then reemerged as the producer of documentaries, or should I say docu-fictions, by one Dinesh D'Souza. And he also produced The Meg with Jason Statham recently too. So there's a couple movies like this. Like there was a movie I remember watching with my grandma called God's Army from like 2000. By this guy named Richard Dutcher, who was like an indie Mormon director. And he was like, I really want to make like a serious, gritty drama that's about Mormon issues. And he ended up eventually leaving the church, which like you watch his movies and it's kind of obvious because there's just like a lot more explicit questioning and wrestling with some of the church's darker past than you would get in a movie from an active Mormon who wants to make the church look good. Like his movie God's Army, which is all about like missionaries on the streets of LA. Like there's a scene where there's a black missionary who is confronted by the people that he's teaching about about the church's history of racism. And he's sort of trying to have to explain that like on his feet and sort of defend that. And so it raises a lot of interesting questions. There's also like Saints and Soldiers. There's like a World War II movie about some Mormon guys. And these are movies where they kind of try to smuggle that stuff in and make it so you non-Mormons might get tricked into watching it. So like I remember that this movie coming out, and it was a big deal again because there weren't a lot of Mormon movies, and it was theatrically released. Most Mormon movies were direct to video. And it had Anne Hathaway, and Mormons are always like thirsty for Mormon representation, and they're always like gossiping about like, oh my God, did you hear like that celebrity's actually Mormon, or like that person grew up Mormon, or they used to be Mormon. So I remember like this coming out, people being like, wait, is Anne Hathaway Mormon? Just because it was kind of like, why would you be in a movie about Mormons like if you didn't believe in it? It was just like, that's pretty weird to just like pretend you believe in the true gospel. Okay, so everybody was like, is Anne Hathaway a secret Mormon? Don't think she is.
No.
But basically, this is kind of a movie that there's really not a lot of. What?
I said, did I miss
What
the
did you say,
synopsis
Andrew?
of this movie?
I don't think you ever.
I feel like there's a web
we
of
just talked about.
connections.
We really just spent the time talking about every other movie
I'm so
that's also Mormon.
I would say this has been a very Pynchon-esque monologue.
I had some context. You know, okay, well, I did say at the beginning that it was about a Mormon missionary in Tonga, which is basically what the movie is about. So it's set in the 1950s. It's about this young guy named John Groberg, and in this opening voiceover, he's like, "I'm from Idaho. Like, I have 7 brothers." Anne Hathaway is his high school boo. At the beginning of the movie, he gets assigned to go on a mission for 3 years in Tonga. And Anne Hathaway is going to presumably wait for him, and the bulk of their movie is like narrated by their well, that's what you kind of trying to figure out the whole movie, because the bulk of the movie is like narrated by their correspondence. You know, like him writing letters to her writing back. A lot of times the letters don't get there because he has like a hard time. It takes him like 2 months and like all of these different ships to like get to the island he needs to get to. And so there, and then like dudes are trying to court her and ask her to marry them, and she's like, I'm still waiting, and all of this stuff. And so a lot of the movie is very much like about virginity and like waiting for marriage. And there's like a part, this guy's, you know, he's trying to convert these Tongans, and there's already some converts there, but he's trying to spread the word, spread the gospel. And at one point, like, these people who have converted are like, oh, you have to marry our daughter, you know, stay here with us. Like, she loves you. We want you to be part of our family. And he's like, no, let her wait for, you know, the man she's meant to be with, you know, no. Yeah. And it's just very much about, you know, just kind of like chastity. And so it's basically, I don't know, it's like very hard.
Wait, so is the other side of heaven like after sex? Is that what is a double entendre here?
I mean, I guess so. I never thought of that, but basically because the whole movie kind of, you're like, are they going to get together? And then at the end of the movie, you've been seeing these kind of shots that you think are like dreams of Anne Hathaway and a like waking up in bed in a like flowy white dress. And at the end of the movie, you realize that's like, she's waking up for him, waking up in the morning, going to meet him on the beach, like after he's returned from his mission. And so, you know, it's kind of, that's like the bulk of the drama, but otherwise it's kind of like, I was thinking there is sort of a tradition, a little bit of like Hollywood, like adventure movies that are about Christian missionaries. Like The African Queen is actually about like Christian missionaries, and like it's like Into the Sixth Happiness, which is about like a woman in China, you know, teaching.
All of these, Coast is anti-Christian missionaries. So
wow, damn.
Yeah, shout out to Mosquito Coast, the real best missionary movie.
Yeah,
I mean, I can't speak for Mormonism, but I know like if you're raised evangelical and maybe just Christian in general, evangelical.
If you're raised evangelical, please reach out.
If you're raised evangelical, maybe also in the Mormon church, and maybe just in general in Christian churches, like there's always a big plug for. Who's gonna be a missionary next? How about you? Does anybody want to be a missionary? Like it's a big thing of like your identity growing up of like, will I be a missionary? Maybe.
Well, the real galaxy brain ones were like, you're going to be a missionary to New York City or something. You know, not even like going to.
I mean, I definitely thought I was going to be a missionary at one point in my life. Like that's how much it's a thing. Yeah.
My dad served his mission in New York City. You know, he was out there on the pavement, the mean streets. I knew people who got assigned to serve like Spanish-speaking missions in Pittsburgh and stuff like that. A lot of people got sent to South America, and it's an even bigger deal, especially for Mormon men. Now a little bit more for women, but when you are growing up as a Mormon male, that's like what you're being trained for constantly. Like we would do like exercises as a team, like going and knocking on doors, practicing and stuff, and you know, Nathan, that 2-year mission is such a thing.
Do you still identify as a Mormon?
No, it's not. You know, I don't believe in it, but it is something where it's like is a big part of my cultural identity and informs a lot of how I've engaged with the world. I mean, I think a lot about how, like, you know, I couldn't watch rated R movies for a really long time. So when I did start getting into movies, I still kind of wanted to like abide by the rules. So I would watch like older movies that didn't have ratings or like foreign movies that didn't have ratings and stuff, you know, to try to like, or watching movies edited on TV and stuff like that. And I was thinking about how this movie was, well, I was just thinking, it was just a very fundamental to what you were saying of that imagery of like, you know, missionary, like it was very like missionary propaganda. And it feels very like, you know, they were trying to definitely water it down for a mainstream audience. Like there's a scene where he's like teaching himself to read Tongan, and he does it by like comparing a like Tongan Bible and an English Bible. And when I was a kid, I wasn't really paying attention to the fact that it was a Bible, and I think I assumed it was the Book of Mormon. But you know, they're, you know, trying to keep the universal text, and there's only like one Mormon hymn performed in the movie, which is kind of like, I don't know, Mormon hymns are just very central as they are in any church, and there's like a very specific set of hymns, but there's only one at the end, which is God be with you till we meet again, which was originally like some Mormon hymns are like just written by random Christian people centuries ago, but then they were like picked early on by Mormons and have kind of become really associated with the Mormon church over time. And that's one that they like play a lot at the end of like meetings and stuff. But it does have a very like, it's nothing specific to Mormons. It's just like, God be with you till we meet again. Like, you know, happy trails, like the Spirit like be with you. It's just like very,
like the Mormon equivalent of Amazing Grace, you know? Or something.
Yeah, basically, you know, and so it's just like you know, and it is like, I think ostensibly other Christian churches like could sing that hymn.
Right.
So it is very much like trying to like kind of strip back. There's only like one scene, I think, where someone is like, "Hey, you Mormons," and the rest of the time they're just missionaries. And there's like another Christian missionary on the island, and they're kind of competing with him at first, but then they like become friends. The other missionary like dies and is like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I judged you." When like, you know, we're all together in this, like, and it's just so it feels both like it's really trying to hit the Mormon audience. And when I saw it as a kid, I definitely like the things where it's not explicit or not like super jargony. It's like I definitely kind of like, I was like, oh, I recognize this. Like it's maybe not explicit about certain doctrinal stuff, but it's so recognizable and like is the classic image of the guy in the button-up shirt and the tie. But it's also very colonialist in that it's like, as you know, there's a little bit of kind of mockery of like the cultural traditions and rituals and stuff. And also like as he comes and as he converts more and more people, they get like electricity. But there's also a part where they kind of try to be like, oh, these are the like good colonizers versus the Australians who trade liquor for women and do human trafficking and try to get the natives drunk. And so it's like we have the white knight missionaries who are like stopping the natives from drinking alcohol. And it's just like, okay, buddy. But it was definitely kind of like, you know, trying to inspire Mormon kids to be missionaries, but also trying to make Mormons look very normal to non-Mormons. And it wasn't a very successful movie. I mean, it wasn't a super expensive movie. $7 million budget, grossed around $5 million. They made a direct-to-video sequel. Like,
it's true.
And it was also much longer.
Lloyd and Macaulay Culkin.
Man,
Yeah, I
Macaulay
think
Culkin
they need
was
to
a
do
Mormon.
they need to do like I'm sure there has been, but some kind of like Book of Mormon, like Pagemaster, or like Bible Man type thing, where it's just like
Bible Man. I should have watched that.
Right, the Pagemaster fanfic where they
Yeah.
jump into the Book of Mormon.
I think I'm good. I think they don't need to do this.
Yeah.
I mean,
don't listen to
The
us.
Book of Mormon is just Bible fan fiction, you know, when you think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, half of the Bible
Just,
is
hey,
arguably
look-
fan fiction of other parts of the Bible, so you know.
Yeah.
It's true.
Man,
Joseph Smith was just like, hey, what was Jesus doing during those 3 days? Like, what was going on there? Was he chilling? Like, I think that's a story. And then he just, boom, you got this religion. That fucked my life up.
We all had really peculiar childhoods and watched some very strange movies.
Yeah.
I do like enjoy the overall thread of our religious
Yes.
upbringings brought us
Yes.
to these
Oh,
movies.
I think we're untapping some
definitely.
good stuff tonight, you guys.
My movie is
We're doing
also
some
very religious.
real work here.
And we'll find more religious upbringings in our
I think
past
we should just
after
keep on
the
going.
break.
Let's keep going. No break.
Let's take a break.
No
please.
break.
Please, Lord.
Are we
Marathon.
stopping for a break?
Yes.
And
Are we
we'll be
stopping
back
it?
with more religious upbringings after a short break.
Thank you.
Stay with us.
Anne Hathaway also looks.
All right, so I'm hitting
weird
stop on the record,
in
right?
this-
Good. Yeah, we're taking
in
a
this-
break.
She looks so strange. I gotta show
Andrew's
y'all.
sleepy.
Look at this. This doesn't look like Anne Hathaway. It's wigging me out.
I
It's
thought-
so-
Zach, when
like
you
how-
edit this,
Yeah,
when you
I
edit this,
know.
Zach, you gotta do the break as Andrew is saying, no, let's keep going, and like cut him off mid-word and then start
Oh,
the...
absolutely.
It's
Start
very
the
funny how we were like,
mid-section.
we could maybe squeeze one more in before we go to break. Let's hear from Nathan. Surely we'll be
I'm
really
so
quick.
Sorry. I know.
Let me give you a brief
I was
100 level course
fuck.
on Mormon cinema first before I talk about movies.
Nathan, I will say that the religious upbringing where you weren't allowed to watch like certain content and stuff like that, like kind of leading you to burrow into like film in interesting ways is like I totally relate to that because like we watch so much like classic like Hollywood cinema, like like Hays Code cinema, like as a family, and I feel like I just watched so many movies that like I mean they're not like obscure movies like Casablanca and things like that, but like definitely like when I was like 10 or whatever, like none of my peers were watching black and white movies, but I was.
Yeah,
'cause my dad would bring them home.
I was that way with like TV too. Like I watched like old sitcoms on like TV Land, and like I Love Lucy and Green Acres and stuff for the same.
I just watched
reason.
PBS.
I was like, and PBS too. But I was just actually like looking at the director of The Other Side of Heaven's Wikipedia page, and he says he like was inspired to make movies by seeing It's a Wonderful Life and like a BYU film class.
Oh wow!
And I don't know. I was just thinking about how like I remember watching It's a Wonderful Life a lot as a kid, like. Even like not on Christmas and stuff, and that just being kind of a like I guess it's about angels, but being in like Christian classic a little bit.
That like that thing that you were talking about, where like these are Mormon movie, like kind of like crypto Mormon movies, you know, where they don't talk about like a lot of the explicit theology. Like there's a whole, I feel like there's a whole canon of like of movies that are basically Christian movies, but that don't that don't talk about that. So like I don't know, like. This is kind of a weird example because it is R-rated and has nudity in it, like infamously for Christians. But like Braveheart, like I feel like that is like totally like a crypto Christian movie. And like there's like other movies too that it's like all Christians know that these are the okay movies because they're about like
well even there are there are the edgy Christians who are like, oh, The Matrix is a Christian movie, right?
Dude, I watched like a whole like thing in like youth group about how the Matrix was really like all this like platonic stuff in the Matrix was really about like you got to wake up to the real world, which is heaven, etc.
I mean, I love the Matrix, but the thing about the Matrix, you can apply the metaphor to literally anything.
Yeah,
it's a super malleable metaphor for sure. Hey, while we're actually taking a break, I'm gonna go potty.
Go potty.
Did you say go potty?
He did
Go
say
potty.
go potty.
be in the
He's
potty.
a father.
I say go potty. Not usually been my cool.
These are your cool adult friends? Cemetery fun fact. Michael's going potty.
I think I'm gonna keep Cinematary fun facts for forever now. I like Cinematary fun facts. Some entertain, some might get me in trouble, but all are good. I gotta write some for myself because I won't be able to think of them on the fly. You either. I just like Nathan. You just explained the whole plot of every other movie except for the one you're supposed to talk about.
It was like a dozen movies.
There was some context. Okay. Well, I could have gone longer. I could have gone deeper.
That's fair.
One day.
But I chose it more as a vessel to talk about
Take the things out
Mormon
for now.
films, you know.
Why?
So
Just put them on.
My head's so bad.
You want to switch?
I guess.
Okay, here you go. I like these more.
Good. Great. I like these more because they're soft on my head. They
Oh,
don't hurt.
why haven't you
Can you
used them the
bring-
whole time?
I don't know. Because those are sleeker. They sound better than these do, but these hurt my head less. Hey, can you put my friends' faces back on the screen, please?
Here's your cool adult friends.
Oh, here's my friends.
Are we your cool adult friends, Jesse?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Do you like my disco ball? I'm in a disco phase right now.
I actually have really enjoyed that because I've just kind of idly been looking at the lights.
Thank you.
Like it's like a good like, I don't know, whatever the visual equivalent of white noise is.
Oh, cool. I'm glad I could provide that space for you.
Vibes.
Yeah, vibes. Yeah.
Mm.
You guys
Borrowing
ready?
this disco ball from Paige.
Yeah,
but
let's do
I
it.
want it.
Well,
It's
actually,
so
let me
nice.
mute.
I'm ready.
And then start a new track.
I need it for myself.
Okay, now I'm ready.
All right. In 3, 2,
2.
1. And we're back with part 2 of episode 350 of Cinematary. Let's keep it going, and let's enter the Mask of Light.
So for my movie, I chose to watch a Shakespeare film.
Get out of here.
And yeah, it's by Terry Shakespeare, director Terry Shakespeare, and producer Sue Shakespeare, wife of Terry Shakespeare.
Terry and Sue.
And that movie is man, can we get through this? I don't know. Bionicle : Mask of Light. I feel like
Mask of Light.
no, it's just Mask of Light.
Wow.
Look at the poster. It's just Mask of Light.
Dang.
Okay.
So,
Well, I got the VHS behind me, so
do you really?
Oh man.
yeah, I do.
Oh my gosh!
Oh my gosh.
No,
I have-
actually, it's in
I
the
have
living
the
room,
VHS.
I think.
Oh,
Oh,
dang.
man.
Okay. Well,
Go get it.
might be worth running in and getting.
Yeah, go get it.
But
Yeah.
I definitely have the
I'll
VHS
go
of
get
this movie. I feel like most of my discussion here is going to be just explaining what Bionicle is, and I'm going to need Nathan to help me out. But I will say, as a quick preamble, that I had a couple movies that I felt like I could choose between, and all of them were like franchise tie-in movies for like video games or toys or things like that, which says a lot about my childhood and my media consumption. Like it was very branded. And I wrote about this a little bit in my my review for Detective Pikachu about 2 years ago, of like the corporatized like nature of my childhood and a lot of people's childhoods. But the movies that I was choosing between were the Bionicle movie, the first Pokemon movie, and this like kind of obscure Sonic the Hedgehog anime from the 90s. But this is the one that I have the most vivid memories of. This is the one that I owned on VHS and watched a lot. There it is.
Nice.
There it is.
This is
And
why.
Wait, does it
Yeah, this
is it
can I
the
just
Mask of
say-
Light?
Yeah, this movie, it was my introduction to the concept of direct-to-video because I remember seeing the ad for it in my like Bionicle comics or the like Lego
Yeah.
magazine, and I was like, "Oh, guys!" I like went to school and was like, "Guys, there's a Bionicle movie. Like, we got to go see it in theaters when it comes out."
Yes.
And it didn't come out.
I
in
had the
theaters.
exact same experience.
and I was like,
thought-
"Wait, what the fuck?"
Yes. I thought that like Bionicle was going to sweep the nation because it was going to be the next big cinematic event. But then like, no, I just had to wait for it to come to Blockbuster or something, which was weird. And when you watch the movie, you definitely can tell why. Like it looks like a straight to video, like cheapo CGI, you know, thrown together shovelware thing. But I feel like to get into it, we have to talk about what Bionicle is because like and its bare bones, this movie is basically just the story of the Lord of the Rings, but everything is just branded with Bionicle instead. So Bionicle, it is a subcategory of Lego. And it's even like a subcategory within a subcategory because there's Lego bricks, but then within the umbrella of Lego, there was also Lego Technic, which was like Lego that was marketed towards like the kids who want to be engineers one day. These are very complex machines with like a lot of gears, and sometimes they had motors and like wireless stuff, like wireless electronics. And then within Lego Technic, there was Bionicles, which like used this like really engineering heavy side of Lego to create essentially like fantasy action figures. And so the Bionicle are like superheroes essentially, but not in the same way as like caped superheroes from comic books. They have more of like a kind of vaguely like mystical, like somewhat like vaguely Eastern, like martial arts vibes to them.
There's the Lego got into a lot of like controversy and like litigation because of the franchise's like appropriation of Maori culture.
Yes.
And like the uses of like the Maori language in the comics and stuff.
So I wasn't sure to what extent they were pulling from like real cultural stuff and to what extent they were like building a fake culture from the ground up. But it definitely feels like they're kind of playing with, Orientalist tropes, right? And yeah, there's like a whole creation myth and like this kind of Zoroastrian, like eternal struggle between good and evil. And the superheroes in the center of the story, because there's like a lot of like story and lore surrounded these action figures that didn't actually have like a movie or anything for a really long time. Like I remember kind of absorbing the lore almost in the same way that people understand like Dark Souls lore now, where like you read descriptions on the back of boxes and you kind of like put together different bits of information. That like you get the feeling that it all makes sense, somewhere very far away from you, and it's your job to kind of put it all together. There's like this complex.
There were the comic books which came with the Lego Club magazine, which I was an ardent subscriber of, and they like set the story up to the Mask of Light movie, which I think came in like issue 14 or 15.
Yes.
And there was also like, I remember having one time my birthday, like my parents were like, "Where do you want to get dinner? It's your birthday." And I was like, "I want to go to McDonald's," because they had Bionicle toys and they had like a special mini comic. And like, I was like, I got to get the mini comic. I got to know that little piece of Bionicle lore.
Yes.
There were a lot of browser games comics, too.
There were like descriptions on the backs of boxes. The browser games was the big thing. I don't remember what the name of this browser game was, but there's this one like point and click.
Was The Legend of Matanui, and it's like
The Legend.
The Legend of Matanui, and it's like a pretty blatant Myst knockoff if you look at it.
And I didn't know what Myst was. I didn't play Myst until last year. But I remember it was so hard, and I think that I engaged with the game and was obsessed with the game for the same reason that people were obsessed with Myst, because they just like had it on a disc when they grew up and they didn't understand it, but it was like this weird I don't know, like esoteric feeling thing that like you were just drawn back to because it didn't make sense and you felt like you needed to figure it out, right? But yeah, all this like weird fragmented disparate lore stuff kind of like leads up to the first like narrative that the bio like associated with Bionicle, which is the Mask of Light, and it is essentially, like I said, a Lord of the Rings story. It's also kind of a almost, as we were talking about, kind of a stealth Christian thing about like a messianic figure. But the story here is we have our 6 main like superheroes. They all like represent a different elemental trait. Like one of them is fire, one of them is water, one of them is ice, one of them is air, etc.
The ice was my favorite.
Koa. No. It starts with a K. It's like Kovaku or something. I don't know. They all have these weird, I don't know, like invented language names.
Kopaka.
Kopaka. There it is. Yeah.
Master of Ice.
And these people are all like the superheroes are all called Toas. And there's just a lot of like lingo for different elements of this world. And I think Jessy just like tuned out a couple minutes of this movie because like every line has like 3 or 4 different like it's almost like you're watching Clockwork Orange or something. Like all these terms you're just expected to know.
It's also funny that there was I guess I had no reference point for Bionicle watching this with him last night. Yeah. And so, like, it just kind of seemed like, was there a TV show? Oh, no. And, like, I'm hearing now for the first time, there was also no theatrical release. Like, they really just, like, shot at their shot.
They shot at their shoot, man.
Like, really just went 130% with this movie, expecting people were going to be just rabid children like Andrew.
And there were. There was a huge.
Bionicle saved Lego. Bionicle literally saved Lego, though. Like they were in like very bad financial straits in the 90s, and so Bionicle was their attempt to compete with the action figure market, and it like saved them. And I mean, now they just mostly do like licensed stuff, which I feel like is kind of where their money comes from.
Nike made Bionicle shoes that I had. They had little masks.
Yeah. Oh my God, the shoes.
Toe, which I haven't mentioned the masks. So like the central component of the franchise is like all these superheroes wear masks, and you put a different mask on to get a different power. And so there's the Mask of Light, which is the centerpiece of this movie. They find this like new mask that glows, and like specifically glows in the direction of a specific person who's like chosen by the mask. And so they think that this person is like a prophet who's going to bring, who's going to be the herald of the Messiah, the seventh Toa, the Toa of light, who will like finally conquer the darkness. And you know, it's a very silly like kind of trailblazing story where we're kind of hopping from one, you know, elemental locale to the next on the way to like the deep dark big bad, and then like, oh, the mask of the Toa of light was you all along. You had the power within you the whole time. And you know, there are characters who die and they get brought back to life, and there's really not a whole lot interesting to say about the narrative in this movie, in the same way there's interesting things to say about like the Pagemaster or the seventh brother or whatever. But it was bizarre, like just how many lines of this movie I had like stuck in my head that I didn't know I had stuck in my head, especially because of how much gobbledygook is crammed into every single line here. So, I mean, I guess my main takeaway is like children will internalize anything if you like brand it and sell it to them hard enough. They will just like obsess over it and like create this like encyclopedic you know, knowledge base of information about just nonsense.
I was just like, we were watching this movie and I was trying to like take on the perspective of like a boy's mom during this era and what that would feel like. This kid will not shut the fuck up about these like Lego toys, and they scream and vent about needing this new like masked figure, and they know so goddamn much, and they want to share with you all that they know about this thing, and then they
Right.
want to watch this movie, and then they want to watch this movie all the goddamn time, and you're just like,
I will say, like,
There was
I will say as a parent, like, that is just the experience of parenting, is that they just talk and talk and talk. You're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And then they want to watch the same movie over and over again. Like, that's just what parenting is.
One day, Jarvis, Michael's son, will be on a podcast like this talking about Charlotte's Web.
Yeah, or Bambi. That's another big
Bambi.
rotation one.
Or
well, you
Bionicle
mentioned,
Massive Life.
That's right. Not too late for that.
oh my god.
I mean,
you
that's really
mentioned
all I
some of the,
have.
like, I just wanted to quickly, like, you mentioned some of the Bionicle merchandising stuff, but
Yeah.
there were like so many tie-ins. Like they were going to do, it got scrapped, but they were planning on, and I remember being advertised in the Lego magazine, Bionicle the album, which was going to have like
Oh,
original
yeah.
Bionicle theme songs by like Rob Zombie and other artists of that
Oh my
ilk, but it
gosh.
was
Yeah.
not released. There was also a lot of skateboarding tie-ins. There were some various skaters who had Bionicle boards at competitions, and also a big tie-in with All American Rejects, who had some of their songs in Bionicle commercials and would show up in like
remember
ads.
that.
And there was like a sweepstakes of like hang out with All American Rejects and get Bionicle swag.
Oh
And,
my god.
There's also like
There's also
they kept putting out like different generations of Bionicle.
yeah,
Like there's the original Bionicles, and then like a couple years later
The
they came out like the
Bakshi.
new and improved versions of them. Like it's the same characters, but they have like armor now, and they have different weapons, and their masks look a little different, even though they're the same basic shape.
They did that
have-
with Power
they had-
Rangers too.
Well, that it's totally
They-
a Power Rangers thing, and
Yeah.
they put out a new set every couple of years, and so there's only so many
Yeah.
generations that I know until it becomes completely foreign.
new villains. The Borak Call, the Rakshi, these are names that are just coming up from like the swamp of my subconscious.
I
don't
don't
know how I
remember what
fucking
their
know that.
name is, but the ones
but
that
also-
like the enemies that like curled up into a little orb that you could
Yeah,
also
that's the
like
Borak
make their
Call.
head snap forward. Those were the coolest, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was also this like similar Bionicle like line, which had a tie-in show, which I mentioned this to people and like nobody remembers it, and I feel like I'm making it up. But it was like a similar sort of like posable parts thing, but it was like more action figure like real human kind of alien heads and body parts and stuff. And it was this show called like Galador Quest. It was on like NBC or something, and it was
that
about
doesn't
this
sound
kid
real.
named Nick Bluetooth. And he like
What?
had these powers where he could like swap like alien parts and like grow like robot limbs, and I don't fucking know, but you could like
Excuse me?
swap his parts with the robot, and like I feel that like I was imagining it, but it was a similar kind of Bionicle thing, and there was a really shitty Doctor Who like show that I remember. Anyways,
Yeah, I have no point of reference.
a lot of
for
media
that.
out there, a lot of
A
kids
lot of
media.
media out there
A lot of
trying to
media.
get kids to be obsessive fans. Oh, Jesse also thinks that the Bionicle are basically Transformers, which I think that Power Rangers is probably the closer.
Everything's
comparison.
Transformers.
But it is kind of Transformers in that like literally everyone is a robot, and that's not weird. Like it's not like they're robots
Yeah.
existing in the human world. It's just like the human world is robots. And
So Last Airbender with robots.
yes. Last Airbender, Lord of the Rings, Transformers. What was the other thing? I forget. All of these
Maori
things in
culture.
a stew. Maori culture. That's Bionicle. We're just painting by numbers to create like mythical seeming children's entertainment.
Well, speaking of myths and children's entertainment, that'll lead us into our last movie.
All right.
What are we talking about?
We're about to talk about the classic Secondhand Lions.
Okay. I feel
Um,
like you picked like a very normal movie. We all picked.
It's funny that you all hated. I genuinely liked my movie. It was a
Yeah.
good movie. Like
you picked just a regular movie that
it was
was
a.
enjoyed. I wanted
was
to
a
do
great-
that, but Andrew said no.
It was a great little movie. You know, I thought about watching Cat in the Hat with Mike Myers,
Oh,
but
I wish you had.
that's for another time. I
Let's-
think we should. I think
Let's
the
you and I
group
do
should
that, Zach. Yeah, please.
maybe. We'll do that during Shrek September. Oh wait, we can't do that. Never mind.
2022 Shrek Timber.
Well, it's the 20th anniversary of Shrek this year, but anyway.
I know.
There's always Ogre-tober.
So Secondhand Lions, the 2003 film. It's
Ogre.
That's yeah.
I think that's it. I think that's what's happening. I think we just planned the series live on air. October.
October.
I'm putting it on the calendar.
Would you not have a plan for October previously?
No, but we do now.
Why did we
Yeah,
do
it's
this
October.
before?
Because it was gonna be Shrek Timber. We didn't think we could find another one that made more sense. But now we got it, October.
Michael just spit out some gold.
You're welcome.
That's right.
Patrons listening now. That's right.
Anyway, I'm going to talk about
history being made.
I'm going to talk about my movie.
Secondhand Lions.
Which so I get it. Like, so there's only one lion in the movie.
Dang.
There's only one, but I guess it's like that Robert Duvall and Michael Caine are the lions. I don't know. So this is written and directed by Tim McCandless, who I looked up, and he I think he helped write The Iron Giant, or as many people know, that Killing Machine and Ready Player One and Space Jam 2, the new legacy, because that's what his legacy is now. But Secondhand Lions, it takes place in I don't know, bumfuck Texas, and Haley
Jack is
Joel
from bumfuck Texas, so you can say that.
Yeah, I'm from bumfuck Texas. It's fine. We're good. That's we'll get into that in the.
Nobody's gonna cancel you for this one.
I don't. What's Texas gonna do to me?
The state of Texas.
Texas can do a whole lot, man.
No, we're as a native Texan, we're all good. So Secondhand Lions, it stars Robert Duvall and Michael Caine, and they live out in bumfuck Texas. And Haley Joel Osment is the son of Kira Sedgwick's character, and she is not a great mom. She's not a great mom, and so she drops him off with these two strange men who are brothers and not gay lovers. And just want to specify. And they spend their time sitting with shotguns on the front porch. And
Be a lot cooler if they were gay lovers, though, right?
I thought for a while, I thought they might have been. I was like, good for them. But then
Not
they were like,
gay brother lovers. That would be weird.
No, that's Alabama. That's not Texas.
Oh my god! You better watch
If they were lovers, it
Alabama
adds new
listeners
meaning
are
to
gonna
the
come
second-hand part.
That's true. And the lion.
That
And the
vaguely
lion.
sounds
They're
like
lying
Lingo, but I don't
around.
know what it actually means.
Wait, what did you say?
It's like,
Look, I'm just high on October, so I gotta keep spinning this
Just like,
gold.
oh, here we go, another one.
Another one.
I'm still laughing at gay brother love.
Gay brother lovers.
This
is
is
what
what these
happened.
anniversary episodes are.
This is what happens when we get to the end part of the anniversary episodes too. I feel like Dylan in episode 200, where everybody was drunk off their ass, and he's just standing there, trying to say his movie.
Trying to explain Boss Baby.
Yeah, he's.
And I was there but not participating, and I was just sitting on the couch watching this all unfold.
So for the most part, it's just them firing guns at traveling salesmen, fighting off relatives. But then Haley Joel Osment learns about their checkered, illustrious past, where they joined the French Foreign Legion at the offset of the Second World War, and First World War, whatever. Who cares?
Foreign
How old
Legion
are
was
these
for
lions?
French people?
I don't know how old the gay brother lovers are. But anyway, so they're like in northern Africa, fighting off Nazis or something.
It's Beau Travail.
Mm-mm.
I decided that it's actually this is The Irishman for Texas.
Wow.
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 What does that even mean, Zach?
Wait, did they use CGI to de-age them?
No, they just
Oh,
look
so
old.
not that part. Oh, okay.
They just look old. So then they tell the story about how Robert Duvall's character when he was younger was like this swashbuckling dude and fell in love with a woman. I shit you not. Her name's Jasmine.
Why would we need to be shitted? Like,
Why would we need to be shitted?
what's wrong with that name?
Shitted and farted.
That's a normal name.
Well, I mean,
I shit you not. Her name was Wendy. Crazy, I know.
well, you got Aladdin, so it's like you're in Northern Africa.
If her name was Secondhand Lion, then I think I would need the I shit you not.
It was Secondhand. She was one of the two lions. So they tell that story about how they're in love. Haley Joel Osment, he's really smitten with it. And then Kira Sedgwick's character comes back with her boyfriend. They're trying to steal because they also have all this money because while they were in Africa, they fought this sheik, and then the sheik had a lot of money, and they stole the money, and they stole the girl, and then she died in childbirth, and now they're in Texas. This is a sweet movie. I enjoyed Secondhand Lions. I think out of all the movies where we're talking about how we look back at it, it's terrible. I like this one. I remember watching it. We didn't have like the fancy car TV things where it's like the TV on the back of the seat, but we had like this portable thing that we'd sit in the middle of the car and watch movies. Shrek was a frequent one on that, but also with Secondhand Lions and
different vibes.
Yeah, I'm not lying. Shut up, Michael.
I just wanted to workshop that in the comments before I said it out loud.
No, you're good. But I also I remember watching this a lot. I went through this phase when I moved to Tennessee from Texas that went on longer than it probably needed to be, where like my defining feature was I'm from Texas. You're not.
Zach, I can totally relate. Like I hated Tennessee when I first moved here, and I definitely would say
yes, we're here with some Texas boys. Yeah,
I still have the Texas flag on my wall. So,
dang,
I have a Texas.
I'll tell you what. After we moved to Tennessee, after my family moved to Tennessee, we had already watched Secondhand Lions a lot, and my dad liked it a lot, and that was part of why. But after we moved, my dad would literally fast forward through all the like flashback story scenes and just watch the scenes of Texas landscapes because he missed Texas so much. And I also think that
Texas
he
movie.
Wants to be Robert Duvall and sees himself as a Robert Duvall type and loves just anything with like old Robert Duvall.
Let me tell you, I saw myself a lot in Robert Duvall's character. He was grumpy. He liked to take passive aggressive shots at people. He liked to take literal shots where he would fire a shotgun over the people's heads, and he was grumpy. And I just really felt that. I think I'm gonna find my own gay brother lover, and I'm gonna go live in Texas. And then
is that coming out as gay?
This is that coming out as incestual.
I'm gonna make that a
Zach, we love you.
Secondhand Lions, more like secondhand embarrassment.
I ain't lying. It's embarrassing.
Second time's the charm. There it is.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. It's a little problematic. There's some questionable Arabic trends in it.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, is it the worst? No. Is it great? No. But is it the worst? No. There's way worse stuff.
Some secondhand smoke inhalation from these sizzling takes.
Yeah.
Oh, it was what's the lion? There is a lion, but
there is a lion in it. What happens is they realize that they have all this money and they can spend it, and so they start just buying shit. And they have this really cute moment where they like all get little matching gardening outfits and they go out and garden, and then they buy a bunch of zoo animals and they buy a lion and they're gonna kill the lion.
They bought a
We
zoo.
bought a zoo.
Yeah, it's a whole
Jinx.
crossover. How the hell did Cameron Crowe not direct this movie?
Second, they built the zoo, and then Matt Damon bought it.
Wow.
So that would make it a secondhand zoo.
Maybe. Why were they gonna kill the lion?
For sport. I mean, it's they were in bumfuck
It's
Texas.
Texas.
yeah,
What the
is
hell
it-
are you gonna do?
Isn't that why they buy the animals at first, is so they can have like safari hunting in their
Mhm.
on their land?
Oof, this movie got
Doesn't
real
seem
weird.
like it's.
And then they're like, "Wait, we have these like lazy lions and this like lazy giraffe. We don't want to kill
This is
them."
ridiculous.
There's
Can you imagine spending like let's say $1,000? That sounds like a bargain price.
What
for
could a lion cost? $10.
You spend like $1,000 on a lion and think like, you know, it'd be so fun for this thing that I just got to just shoot it and kill it, and then bury it.
I
in the
mean, that's
backyard.
why you buy it secondhand.
You
Yeah,
get yourself a
Good
glass
deal.
bottle, put it on a stump, shoot that. Why
It doesn't
didn't you just-
run.
They get a
Humans
throw
are
it
the
in.
most
They
skeet
dangerous
shooter.
game of all.
before they get the lion, they get a skeet shooter and they're shooting it up in the air and hitting the skeets.
And that's just not good enough.
It's not good
They-
enough.
They're
they
shooting
could,
corn. They have so much corn. They grow
Do
so
they
much
ever
corn that they start
buy
shooting the
Duck
corn
Hunt
out
on
of the skeet
NES,
machine.
like,
It's all
why?
coming back to me now.
Do they ever consider hunting Haley Joel Osment?
Briefly, you know, and
I
then-
see dead lions.
Yeah, and then
Well,
his
cemetery-
sixth sense
Let me
comes
give you a
in.
cemetery fun fact. I used to have a crush on Haley Joel Osment.
I knew it was coming.
Cemetery fun
Wait,
fact.
but not now though.
Jessy
That's
loves.
too
I'm
But he
over
looked
it
a little
now,
bit like
but he was a big
Ness.
crush.
You just got a cemetery fun fact.
bad. He does kind of like have Ness vibes. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has
He
those,
was
those
in
eyes like
he
that.
was in this like Cartoon Network anime show that I was super into, and then I was like, "Ooh, this guy's voice is so good. Who is this?" And I looked his
So
face up.
good.
So good. I looked his face up, and I was like, he's hot." And then I had a crush on Haley Joel Osment. What is the name of this show?
Do you
though?
have a crush on him now? Because he's
Absolutely, I don't.
not as cute.
He's not as cute. He's older. Like I'm
Hold
over
on.
it. You know.
Hold on, let's see. Let's see modern day Haley Joel.
I
He
also
looks the
used to
same in the
follow
face. He's
Andrew
just
Garfield.
he's
He
just a
doesn't
chubby
really-
boy.
He's a chubby boy.
I mean, that's
Oh
fine.
yeah, I think I've seen that.
What is this show now? It can't bother me.
Anyway, I would highly recommend checking out Secondhand Lions. It's a good time. I think the Texas boys, we can all appreciate it. It does have some great like Texas landscapes, just like open flat land.
What part of Texas does this take place in?
It had to be like, I'd say East
Bumfuck.
Texas.
Dallas.
Oh, okay.
It looks like East Texas.
I think it's Austin,
Gotcha.
Texas.
Hmm.
That's not East Texas.
Yes, you have no goddamn idea what you're talking about.
I'm pretty sure it's
Get Texas name out of your mouth.
Fort.
That's right.
Yeah, they just say Texas. It looks like East Texas though. Let me see
Okay.
where they. Let me look at the filming. Let me see. So, Secondhand Lions.
It was filmed
filming-
around Austin.
What? Jesse was right. Jesse was right.
That's right, bitch. I told you.
Oh
It was
no.
filmed in and around Coupland.
I like how all of us were
What,
like,
Texas?
yeah, we had kind of weird religious upbringings, and Zach is like, I used to live in Texas.
That was also a unifying factor.
That is a religion.
Wait, this is kind of
Based
like
on
my
everyone
old
I
neck
know
of the
is
woods a
from
little
Texas.
bit.
This is what?
Nathan is from the Secondhand Lion set.
Oh dang.
No, I'm
He was
not,
the
but
lion.
it's
Cemetery fun
it's not
fact.
too far.
He was the lion. Nathan
It's
played
let's
the lion.
see.
Uncredited. Sadly.
Yeah, I didn't have a religious awakening or whatever the hell you guys are doing.
Oh yeah, it's just like
movie.
90 minutes from my hometown.
Wow.
you
You could
say
watch
College
Secondhand
Station?
Lions
Yeah.
on the way there.
Yeah, College Station.
It's actually over 90 minutes. It's an hour and 45. So
Oh, wow.
Well, okay.
Doesn't sound like you're
It
driving
says the
Texas speeds,
fastest
Zach.
route. Take 21.
That was highest budget. No, that was highest time length. of
Highest
movie.
runtime, yeah.
Highest runtime.
the
Budget of time, I guess.
Time is money, you know.
I don't. I was trying to think. I have no idea why, other than that it being in Texas, why I watched this movie as a child so much.
I mentioned this on Slack, but like I think I know lots of people who like really watch this movie a ton. Like there's a certain type of person who like
Texas
when I was in like high school or whatever, they'd be like, "Hi, my name is whoever, and my favorite movie is Secondhand Lions." Like I remember Secondhand Lions coming up a lot, like among my peers as like a
Crazy.
favorite movie.
That's
Like
crazy.
I mean,
though.
I think it kind of has that like Pagemaster appeal.
Yeah.
I think it has
It
the
was
like
like-
Pagemaster appeal a little bit, where it's like adventure stories, like if you're into
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
It's super
like,
fun. It's well paced. It's like, it keeps going. It doesn't ever really slow down. Michael Caine gives little life lessons. Robert Duvall has a moment where he's like, "This is what it means to be a man," and you're like, "Oh."
See, and that was always the vibe I got from the movie, which didn't interest me very much. Like I was like, I don't really like that type of movie where it's a kind of like certain like salt of the earth advice movie. Like that's the vibe I always got from it. And I'm not sure, like as a kid I was like, nah, I want to watch like whatever I wanted to watch when I was in high school.
Pagemaster.
Yeah, I want to watch Pagemaster.
It's one of
but-
those movies that your
I want that
parents have
Jekyll and
seen
Hyde
and they
cameo.
like it plenty,
Yeah.
and so like, and it has. There's nothing you can complain about. There's
Yeah.
nothing bad about it. So it's like dad could just pop that in the VHS.
Yeah, it's like a
anytime.
family movie night. Let's watch Secondhand Lions for the dozenth time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause, like,
It was a staple on the TBS channel.
Yeah. What else
I
are we
think
gonna
I think
all
I think
agree on?
TBS stands for Secondhand Lions. because it
That
was on
is what
TV.
those
Second,
letters.
hands.
yeah.
Yeah.
Slime.
T second. B hand.
They
And
really got to get
slime.
some sleep, man. They're both
That's the
struggling
best
over there.
100%.
They're like trying to work off of Michael's comedy gold, and they just can't do it.
We can't reach those heights.
You know,
Comedy
when-
perfection.
Whenever there's an innovator on the scene, you're eventually just going to have to come to grips with the fact of just the hordes of like imitators, right? Like
That's right.
it just gotta say,
It's hard to be on top.
yeah.
A hero will be revealed. The Mask of Light.
The
I
hero's
think I had
Michael.
Secondhand Lions on VHS. I don't have it with me, but it's probably somewhere. So Secondhand Lions. Also, it's on Tubi, which I recommend on Tubi. Good little streaming service.
Wow.
Free streaming service, right?
Yep.
You get some
With
nice
commercials.
ads.
Oh
So-
yes.
Mm.
Jesse needs to go to sleep.
No, I'm still
Machine
thinking about TBS. stands for.
I think that's also proof that you need to go to sleep.
Yeah, she needs to go sleep. All right. Well,
Oh my god, I have an observation
Let me-
tomorrow.
let me-
It's
Me
great.
too.
another 350. Cheers, clink. Anyway, this. Thank you guys for listening to this episode of Cinematary.
This ridiculous episode of Cinematary.
It's, to be fair, like probably the most tame of the 50
Anniversary episodes.
Yeah.
anniversary
Yeah.
episodes. Pretty
Probably
tame.
the only one below like 2 hours.
Yeah.
Mm,
200 is the doozy episode. I mean, if
It's
like wants
the-
to go revisit an anniversary episode, like that's
It's like the Inland Empire
That's the
of
one.
Cinematary episodes.
yeah. Only the true fans will listen to episode
I thought
200.
it
I
was
think
great.
Michael didn't even finish listening to 200.
No, I did not.
that was amazing. I don't know what.
It's pretty bad.
No,
It's
good.
pretty bad.
I was there. I lived that, but I didn't participate. I was just there watching it all unfold. It was
You can find us on Facebook.com/Cinematary, on Twitter and Instagram at handle @Cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/Cinematary, where we post all the movies that we talked about in this episode. Thank you to our patrons, Cam, Chad Newsom, Christina Daughtry, Corey Willingham, Harry Eskin, Candace Sisson, Maggie, Ron Hayes, Titus Arthur, Tyler Chandler, and Whitney Ria Ross. Thank you so much for your patronage. Next week, we will be running back into our music video series to conclude it with the, 2016?
Yeah.
2016 film Lemonade. So
Also, after Lemonade, we have 2 weeks to fill before our next series, and those are going to be Patreon picks. So if you are a patron and haven't chosen a movie for us to do an episode on yet. Email us, zach@cinematary.com, with your Patreon pick. If you're not a patron but want to pick a movie for us, there's still time to become a patron. And pick a movie.
Or just just give us $5, tell us a movie, and move on.
Yeah.
Venmo.
Yeah, Venmo me $5 and be like, just watch.
Venmo us
Cat
to
in the
watch
Hat.
Bionicle 2 and Bionicle 3.
What a nice little
There
mini
are
series that would be.
sequels.
I could watch The Secret too.
Yeah, all by
Mask.
the Shakespeares.
Is it really
Collected
like
works
the
of
like
Yeah,
Bionicle
Terry
auteur?
Shakespeare. You know, William Shakespeare had like the Henriade. Terry
should
Shakespeare has
do-
the Bionicle trilogy.
We should do a series where we do a Shakespeare series, and we do one like Hamlet in the first one, and then we do Bionicle Mask of Light.
Please.
There's got to be some other Shakespeares. Surely.
Certainly.
Not in showbiz. I don't know. I think they're just two.
There's just the two. There's only room for two.
I know my father, William. He's pretty famous.
All right.
Hollywood
Well, that'll
nepotism run amok.
That'll wrap. That's it. That's it. The episode's over. The end. See you guys next week.
Stay
Goodbye.
cool.
Stay cool.
All right.
I was just kind of thinking, I was like,
Bye,
I was just
live stream
like-
broadcasters.
Bye.